Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We'll begin with a salute to the flag. And we'll have Sue lead us tonight. How's that?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You know, is there anyone online, Sue?
What's the one up there?
It's just us, I think. Is there anyone online wishing to make a comment? Hearing none, we'll move on to acceptance of the minutes from our February 16th meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of February 16, 2021.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I don't have any communications this evening, other than you probably saw that the vaccination eligibility expanded to those 55 and older beginning today. That also includes school staff. So I know that Donna's working closely with Lori Rodrigue to make sure that happens with as fast as possible. We're actually continuing with vaccinating residents through our senior center. Again, the allocation is still on the low side, but I think we're making good progress. We're down in terms of the folks that registered on the town site. We're down to age 70. So I think the message to newly eligible folks is that they should pursue all venues for getting their vaccine, because the odds are, the pace that we're going, if you're at the younger end of the scale, it will be some time, given the fact that there are now educators in the mix, and then child care providers as well, that by the time we get through all that, we will still continue along with vaccinating seniors, but I don't expect that we're going to get to 55 anytime soon. So, I do think that if folks can secure a vaccine elsewhere, they should, and ultimately we will get to them if they've registered on our site, but I don't think that they should wait for that with any kind of expectation that will be soon based on age, given that we're again at about age 70 now. So we'll continue along. Anyone else have anything to share? All right, move on to Finance Director's report.
You have in front of you a worksheet relating to the grand list. The Board of Finance will be updating the mill rate calculation sheet and the grand list sheet in the budget that they're working on. And that's because our grand list has been signed. It's not the final grand list because now we have the Board of Assessment Appeals, but it is the signed grand list. So before you, you could see the first numbered column, which is the M13 2019, which is the prior year. The M13 is actually the form that we sent to the state. So that's the final after the Board of Assessment Appeals. The second column is the current grand list that was signed. As you can see, and we have categories: real estate, which includes commercial, motor vehicle, personal property. And from that top graph, you could see that the grand list increased 1.16%. However, as it pertains to our budget that we're working on, in the prior year, we had some late major personal property add-ons that we weren't comfortable with in adding last year's budget because we didn't get to verify them. So the numbers at the bottom of the sheet reflect the grand list that we used last year. So really, the grand list, as far as the budget's concerned, is going to increase 1.64%. If you go to page 2, the increase in the grand list provides about $1.8 million in new taxes. If you look in the budget, the current year tax that was budgeted in order to balance the budget was the increase was 3.1 million, which represents a 2.9% increase. And you really have to explain it to people because the budget increase on the expenditure side was 2.45%. And the difference is other revenues decreased. So we had to increase current year taxes to account for them. However, at the bottom, you can see that $3.1 million increase, how it was funded. 1.8 million came from the increase in the grant list, and then the rest is an increase in the mill rate, which is currently 1.2%. You can see that on page 3. That's the updated mill rate calculation sheet that's going to be in the budget presented to the council. And it ends up with an effective tax increase up to date 1.19%. And just to show you a little detail, on page 4, it's the residential accounts. Top left-hand corner, you can see, now in a year that's not a reval year, if there is no construction activity, you expect all accounts or valuations to stay the same. And for the most part, it did. You can see out of 10,601 parcels, 10,236 stayed the same. 218 accounts increased due to construction activity, and some decreased. If you look on page 5, I've just highlighted some of the increases. The condo development at Brookside Court, that gave us an increase of 4.8 million. And then the next highlight is a whole bunch of single-family homes. Most of them are new. Some of them, if they had a 2019 assessed value, were partially complete. And those new or updated single-family homes contributed $8.7 million to the grant list. If you go to page 8, a little bit on the commercial. Same thing from commercial. Out of 361 parcels, 344 stayed the same. 9 increased. And on page 9, it shows you those 9. And maybe you can recognize some of them. For instance, the vet hospital, second to the bottom, a nursing home. So those are the 9 things that increased and contributed $3.3 million to the grant list. A little bit more on page 10. The largest accounts that were increased in the personal property category. And you can see the highest were 3 utilities. And then there's a couple other top new personal property accounts. It was interesting. We had an interim assessor with a lot of experience. The assessor's office gets what we call an income and expense account on revenue-producing properties. On one of the pages in the corner, it asks who are the renters, which gave the office the opportunity to go to those renters and see what type of personal property they had. And we had a lot of add-ons because of that. Page 11, a little bit about motor vehicles. Let me go to page 1 just to see. Motor vehicles increased $13 million. However, the numbers of motor vehicles decreased from 27,000 down to 25,800. And we're assuming that's because we had a lot of people move into the state and they were in process of converting their plates. However, we had an increase in motor vehicle grand list because the value, if you remember back in October 2020, the value increased 10 to 15% because of the COVID restrictions and new vehicles not being produced. Unfortunately, there's nothing you can do about that. We have to value those vehicles at October 1st. We get the valuation from the state on a tape, and that's just the way it is. If you look on the very last page, it's just an illustration on how the used car prices soared, and it happened to be on the date that we value motor vehicles. So we're keeping this sheet in the assessor's office because there's going to be some questions. Anyway, good news for the 2020 grand list for the next budget cycle.
Dan, can you speak to the tax credit that the first responders get? I know that the state increased the amount that they were entitled to, obviously based on not protocols, but based on parameters.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that, where that is, and is that something that would be addressed in this coming up budget, or would it be addressed in the following year?
Potentially.
Okay,
So I did discuss this with the Board of Finance at their meeting Thursday night, because they're beginning to look at revenues and whether or not, I think they're also assessing reductions to the overall budget. So they've not yet made a decision on that. But we also discussed the possibility of doing some combination where they also use, because fund balance is in excess of policy right now based on surplus from last year, among other things. So there may be some move to not only make reductions, but also use some of that money, move it to capital non-recurring, and do a similar plan to last year to minimize the tax increase, which is, as Bob's showing, if they do nothing, is 1.2%. But my sense is that there seems to be an interest among the Board of Finance, and I think rightly so, to reduce that as much as possible. I did put out there, so the cost to increase the benefit assessment or tax credit program to the new state guidelines, and the Board of Fire Commissioners did approach the Legislative Council and ask them to look at that. And I know the council did look at it, but I think with things in flux as far as what the state budget was going to be, what our budget was going to look like, it's on hold, and I did share that with the Board of Fire Commissioners. I think that the Board of Finance and the council will evaluate. It's another $107,000 to increase it. So I'm not sure which direction they'll take, whether they'll decide to wait a year or whether they'll decide to do some phased-in process where we do half this year and half next, or just do the whole thing. So I think that all those things are in play at the moment. I think there's an interest in all parts, to do something, so I don't think anyone is objecting. I think it's just a question of whether we get there in a straight line or not.
You do see it on page 3.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's about a double of what we currently have. Any other questions on Bob's report? You did see that we got our AAA rating. I know I shared that with you, and the Bee did a story on it. We are intending to do our annual bond sale on Wednesday. So the market was kind of squirrely. It seems like that it always does that, right? At least the last 2 years. Last year we had to wait because yields blew out, but it looks like that's kind of maybe reverting a bit, so we'll see how we land on. Right now, we're still intending to move forward, and we'll see what happens. Any questions for Bob? So next item on our agenda, I mentioned earlier the transfer. It's actually on the agenda in reverse. It's actually from contingency to highway, but we don't need to change that because I want to hold it back. I asked for some more detail. I wasn't satisfied with all the information that I had, and Bob and I weren't able to catch up on it until this morning. So, he's going to put some analysis together in terms of the line items contributing to the transfer, so it's not as, in my opinion, vague. That's, of course, working with Fred. The other item is transfer from contingency to EDC professional services. This is for the cemetery grant, which we applied for, a while back.
I'll make a motion to approve the transfer of $3,332 from contingency to EDC professional services.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next item is the modification of a conservation easement at 210 Brushy Hill Road. I think Sue supplemented with a map that I think you would, I believe you received this afternoon. We don't ordinarily do modifications to conservation easements. When it came to me, I asked that it be referred to the Conservation Commission for them to review. They did review it and responded favorably. I've checked with land use. This, I think, would make the border, look nicer with, boulders. I believe that there was a wetland consulting service that reviewed it. My understanding is it does not, the landowner would already be permitted to build a house on the property. I think this allows it to perhaps get sited better, but it does not allow for something, so our modification to this, in my understanding, would not allow for something to happen that wouldn't otherwise have been able to happen.
So help me out here. So this is the existing that was approved, the conservation, I can't read it, it's too small. Is that correct?
Yeah, let me see.
Can you see that?
Yeah, that's the existing.
Okay, and so then this is the new, instead of this is going to be I don't know what these hatch lines are here. This is going to be the new proposed conservation easement?
Yeah,
Because it had to be this, I went down there today to see the layout. It's this prior owner is the one that had the issue.
yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, if it's back here,
Here's George Woolman.
so, before I saw the map, I kind of thought maybe it was just slightly a change in this, but it still existed. So from what I read, it sounds like the prior owner of 210 did some work within the conservation easement, which was not proper.
Yeah,
And so the current owner is going to fix that and then put boulders around this new
yeah, there's
easement?
still, there's a proposed, this is the existing, and there's the proposed, so the line's getting moved.
Oh,
See that?
okay,
So there's going to be an easement over here, and then this is, the line is moving. See how it's the small dots and then the
Okay.
larger dots?
okay. All right, so there's actually then two conservation easements on this property? Or is this the only conservation?
No, I think it's two. See, there's the proposed.
Yeah, I know, I saw that too.
Or I don't know, it might be the line moving, like that
Okay.
might be, there was always an easement here, and the
Okay.
line is shifting.
And the
Whereas
line
this
is
one,
shifting here.
yeah,
Okay, now I understand. Okay,
yeah. You see, Jeff? That was my understanding. So here's the existing line, there's the proposed, and then I think this is the proposed line, but it's the larger dots. See how you can see that so I don't know if, what I'm a little unclear on is if this is like the easement's just getting a little smaller. But there, if you read in the paperwork, the developer plans to erect boulders and.
yeah,
It looks like the wetlands analysis says that it won't impact, like there's no negative impact to wetlands. If anything, it makes it look nicer, and you can see there's already a proposed residence identified. What I wanted to make clear was that it was not allowing for, like, by the modification, it doesn't then give way to.
public notice.
No, I think that, I would have been concerned if, from a public notice standpoint, if suddenly they were going to be allowed to do something that,
Right,
like if there was no home going to be allowed there, and then our, agreeing to this would then suddenly give way to one, I'd feel,
right.
but the act of changing would not have, going through conservation would not have warranted any resident notification.
Right, and that was what the original approved, they probably just had to would have gone for building permits, but it was always the intention of even the prior owner to build a house there.
I believe so.
Yeah, that's kind of how I.
Yeah, see, and you can see it talks about exchanging See, remove all the trees, blah, blah, blah. My proposal would increase the wetlands buffer to 25 feet by exchanging a portion of the easement intended to provide a visual buffer. So I think that the visual buffer is getting a little smaller, and then I think that proposed easement over here is the swap. So this space for this space is
Okay.
So we usually don't make a habit of doing these,
Right.
but I think in this circumstance, given that it did go to conservation, looked at it, they agreed.
Yeah, and this 210 is an interior lot, so all it has on road frontage is the long
Correct.
driveway.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So, I mean, it is true that those residents will have a home behind them,
Yes,
but they would have, but it's already zoned for it.
I
so,
was going to
yeah.
say, so when they bought the property, they should have known at some point something might be built there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I don't think all we're doing is swapping some easement.
yeah,
And, the developer of the single home intends to, do some work in improving it. And, I think that we should just make it clear that, just note his approval at the bottom, if you read his letter dated,
January 12th.
is that the date up at the top?
From
Yeah.
Rob?
No, from GRC Construction. He says in his letter, at the end, as part of the approval, I agree to place boulders along the new conservation easements to prohibit future expansion into the protected area. I'll also work with land use to replant the disturbed area and remove any remaining materials placed inside by the previous owner.
Okay,
So I think we should take the developer up on that.
yes. Also, in Rob's memo to you of January 12th, he said, "We ask, if approved, that all final costs of any transfer be the responsibility of the correspondent," and I'm assuming he means Greg Karnick.
Correct.
Okay.
So if you want to stipulate those two
Yep.
things.
So I will make a motion to approve the modification of the conservation easement for property located at 210 Brushy Hill Road with the following provisions: that the owner will place boulders along the new conservation easements to prohibit future expansion into the protected area, to replant the disturbed area, and remove any remaining materials placed inside the conservation area by the previous owner, and that all final costs of any transfer be the responsibility of the owner, GRC Construction LLC.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Doesn't that go without saying? You send us a bill if we.
No, I think so, but at least it's
no.
clear. He's
It
gotta do
was
everything he said
actually
that he was
in
gonna do.
a letter from,
To Rob?
it was in a letter, there's no date on this, that you provided to us. It says,
Yeah.
"To whom it may concern," from GRC Construction. On the first page, it talks about and then the cost part comes from Rob.
All right. So the next is the item that we discussed from our meeting last week. It's the establishment of the Building Inventory and Planning Work Group. So I think as a first order, we should just approve the the language. I would like to establish it, when I get to appointments, as a 5-member body. You'll see there was some staff referenced as supporting the group, but obviously we wouldn't put staff on it. I have one additional appointment that's subsequent to the list that you have, and that's a gentleman named Graham Clifford, who is also an unaffiliated. So that would be, as far as the appointments go, would be Ned Simpson, Alan Adriani, David Schill, Zach Marchetti, who's also you can see unaffiliated, and then Graham Clifford, who's unaffiliated. Graham served for a period of time on the Sustainable Energy Commission. He's also the CTO for a large wealth management firm, so I think he fits that IT skill set that they were looking for. So I think 5 members. I did discuss with the Board of Ed, and I think that obviously the Board of Ed would like to be kept in the loop. I spoke to the chair. Not sure that given all the items that they're involved in, I don't think it's a requirement that someone from the Board of Ed be on this. But I think it makes some sense to, they're certainly welcome to, if they do end up coming with someone that they'd like to recommend, we can always modify the group. But I'm satisfied that given Bob Gerbert is willing to be involved, that I think establishes the connectivity that's necessary. Again, the group, we'll do everything laid out here, and then, of course, we'll look, at software and various things. I think I mentioned that there's already some foundational work that's been done on this. There's a fairly extensive Excel file that databased everything through, 2010 or thereabouts. Obviously, we've done some updates to our buildings and actually built some since then that they'll have to update. But what I'm told is a lot of these softwares are, if you, let's say, put in the model number for your generator, it can pull in the maintenance manuals and all that information. So it's actually, you don't have to go do a whole big Google exercise to try to determine what you have. Basically, by serial number or whatever, it can pull in some of that information without, having to actually do the manual labor required. So if folks are satisfied with the format, the charge, and the members that I listed, obviously with that one change of Graham Clifford, I guess I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to form the Building Inventory and Planning Work Group pursuant to the purpose and specific activities as listed on the document provided, along with appointing Ned Simpson, Alan Adriani, David Schill, Zach Marchetti, and Graham Clifford as members of the work group.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
And then I assume, will they provide us with updates as they
Yeah.
go along? Okay.
If I know Ned Simpson, we will get updates. Yeah. No, he works hard, but he doesn't leave a stone unturned.
No, he doesn't.
For another appointment, we have one vacancy to the Bike and Trail Committee. Charles Zukowski, I'm recommending Charles Fillett. Apparently, he's been working very closely with them as sort of, I guess what I'd call an advisory member. So I think he's been interested in membership for some time. The project that they're, and you have Charles's information, I think should be with the meeting packet. They're actually working on an interesting trail loop right now. They want to, I think they would call it, is it the Revolutionary Trail or something like that? Interestingly enough, if you go up Johnny Cake, right by Mount Pleasant, and exactly, and if you make a left there, right by the Gretsch property, there's still an original roadbed that travels through there, and out to Castle Hill Road.
Really?
So what they want to do is create a walking loop that can go up, they would create potentially some parking spaces off of Castle Hill, but that walking loop, you'd be able to presumably go up the sidewalk, go up Johnny Cake, cut through, and I think most of it is across town. I mean, they might have to get permission to cross in one area, but then come down through the Nettleton Preserve and back into the center of town, and that would be a really neat, walking loop. And again, that's, land that goes way back, and apparently the land that, when during the Revolutionary War that was traveled. So that's why they were going to call it Revolutionary Trail or something like that. And I know Charles, that was something that he's been involved in helping them plot. So certainly they've already been working well. So on that note, I'd like to request Charles's appointment.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Next item is driveway bonds.
I'll make a motion to approve the driveway bond extension to August 12th, 2021 for Elandro Construction for 4 Sunnyview Terrace.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I make a motion to extend the driveway bond to October 10th, 2021 for Neil Forbes, 44 Housatonic Drive.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Tax refunds.
I'll make a motion to approve tax refund number 14 in the total amount of $28,677.12.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That was quick. I don't think there's any voter comment. The only announcement that I would make, I guess, is we are working presently on an RFP for Fairfield Hills. So following the zone change with planning and zoning, we're now working on an RFP to send out to the development community. And again, we plan to get it out as far and wide as we can to see what may be out there in terms of potential reuse for the property, again, according to the special exception use that was permitted by P&Z. So we'll see where we land. Obviously, more to follow, but that should be going out soon, and then we'll see what we get.
I have an announcement. We have our next suicide prevention event on March 29th. It will be virtual. It will be at 6 p.m. There will be hopefully an article in the Bee this week, and I'll have a few more details next meeting.
Okay.
But it is definitely scheduled.
Awesome.
What time, 6 p.m.?
6 p.m.
Any other announcements? All right. Next item is an executive session.
Oh, I'll make a motion to go into executive session for the discussion of potential acquisition of property for municipal purposes. Am I inviting anybody?
Just the three of us.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.